Senator Melissa Wintrow. How are you?
Well, I'm doing great, and it's good to see you again.
It's great to see you too. It's been months, and here we are back at it.
I know it's day two. I'm still smiling. Do you see that? I'm so glad to come here early.
Can we make a promise to each other that we'll do anything to make sure that you're not crying in the middle of a show?
That would be great.
That was a low point in the session last year.
When I was crying?
Yeah, you got really upset
Oh, I
one day,
did.
and I felt so bad for you. And then I asked you, I was like, "Can you say something like optimistic and happy?" And you started, and then it went dark again. I was like, "It's a rough day.
It is
It's a
rough.
rush. She needs a drink."
That does happen from time to time, but it's day two. Things are,
We're optimistic.
they're going as expected. Let's just say that. When things are predictable, then that helps in the very least.
I last year was the first time I'd ever followed any kind of like political thing, right? So doing the legislative session, by this time last year, day two, it was a hot dumpster fire. Like I remember talking to people that were like, "We are losing our damn minds," in literally the second day. So like we're ahead of schedule. Like we're doing much better. I was anticipating more chaos.
Well, my sense is there's a lot more gaslighting going on in this session, especially surrounding, our revenue problem and all these budget cuts. So, I think it's really just like a fog of, smoke and mirrors over there, and so people are, it's a little different.
Okay. Talk to me about this because JFAC is the hot committee this year. We have a revenue and budget issue, however you want to describe it. A lot of people are like, we don't have a revenue issue. We have a budgeting issue. And it's like, okay, like, I don't know what that means. And, if that's the case, great. Other people are like, no, man, we gave away hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars and then we came up short. Like, that's not like, we should have anticipated this coming. People on all sides.
Yeah.
Help me understand what you see and what you think as far as JFAC and our budget.
Yeah. Well, last year, I'll give you the brief history and how
Sure,
this all
sure.
went. But last year, typically in JFAC, what happens is we have a revenue estimate that we approve pretty early. So just
Okay.
like any household, right? Like
Sure.
how much money am I going to make this year? And then we set our budget. Can we fix the roof this year? Do we have to save a little and defer it to next year?
Sure.
Yeah, all that, right? So
May I point something out? Commonly as well, in that consideration, you're like, it's going to cost us $10,000 to replace the roof. Or you could repair it for $2,000. So you don't get the value with the repair. It's a temporary Band-Aid. Overall, it costs less, but you're losing value because you're like, dude, it's going to cost me $2,000. If I just spent $10,000, I could get this whole thing replaced. It would be great.
Right.
But you got to do those temporary fixes. And that's where you get a lot of inefficiency with spending anyway, like the
sure.
temporary fix.
yeah, sure. And I think what you're talking about is in households where, maybe you don't have two incomes, whatever it is, right? And you have to make do until you get more revenue.
Yeah.
The state doesn't have that problem. The state has grown and grown and grown. The revenues have increased. And especially during COVID, when we had an influx of federal dollars to support small business and other things,
sure,
right?
sure.
What I saw the legislature doing is using the federal money to pay for things. Now, you heard the governor say it's only one-time things. We didn't commit to ongoing
Sure.
projects. But there were significant things, and then we use that as an excuse to cut revenue and cut taxes, and income taxes in particular. Speaker Moyle has been pretty, I think, vocal about wanting to have a flat tax. So our, graduated tax is now coming down flat, and I think he still has a desire to go farther, to cut taxes more. I think what people don't understand sometimes is that everyday working folks don't benefit as much from the income tax cuts as they could from like a property tax cut or a grocery tax, cut or those kind of things. So as he keeps dropping it in the flat tax, people with higher incomes are going to benefit the most versus, folks at the bottom end. Now, what we hear sometimes people talking about is we have great sales tax revenue. The percentages are high,
Sure.
right? And that's and it's true. We're continuing to sell things, but you have to think about who is generating that economy. It's mostly working families, right, that are spending money on the everyday things they need: their rent, their mortgage, groceries, clothes, childcare, et cetera.
Right.
So what happens is a sales tax is actually more regressive. It basically the working people are bearing the brunt of what we're doing. And we have actually in recent years put more and more things on sales tax instead of the income tax that comes in for the general revenue. And what we've done is we've split the sales tax off from coming into the general fund and just saying we're going to dedicate it to these things. And maybe that's okay. But big picture for folks, income tax benefits mostly wealthy folks when we cut. I think at the very bottom of the income scale, you get like $33, and if you're over 500,000, you're getting, five grand or something like that, right? So, what happened over time is in the last 4 or 5 years, the speaker has been lowering the tax rate, right, to create a flat tax. So every year there's income tax rebates that have been going out. That's cut the revenue pretty hard. $4 billion in 4 years. $4 billion in 4 years. Okay.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't make sure that government is right-sized, and if there's extra, to give back to the citizens so they can purchase things and do things with their money as they want. But what has happened is as the population has grown, the state has not been mirroring business, right? If you're in a successful business and you get more clients or more people want your product, you don't just cut everything, right? You grow with it so you can increase services. And so I think what's happened here, $4 billion gone, population's growing, more kids in classrooms, more cars on roads, more emergency services,
Right.
more people with dementias, all those medical needs. And we just keep cutting the way that we're going to provide services for people. And so when you go to get your park pass, or you want a clean toilet when you go camping, maybe you need to get your fish and game tag, you want to drive on a road with no pothole, maybe the bridge should work, your kid has a good class. These are all the things that are being affected by the cut so hard in this revenue. And people are using, I think they're saying, when I said gaslighting before, is they're saying we have a spending problem. We don't have a spending problem. We have been cutting the budget over and over and over. And in fact, if you look in the last 2 decades, the budget analysts presented us, I said, give me the amount of money we've been spending in the state for our budget over the last 2 decades and factor in population growth and inflation and tell me where we are. And the graph is flat, which means that every single year we do more with less. And there is a point of diminishing returns, right? And we see that with state employees we can't keep. And there's an increase in recruitment and job training. We're losing a lot of money on that. So it's not making a lot of sense.
That's
to me.
a lot.
That's a lot. Sorry about that.
No. Listen, you're great. If I may
I'm gushing.
Listen, this is why I invite you on. I want it all. With a flat tax, when you engage in a flat tax, it's my understanding that you overwhelmingly put the burden of taxation on people with the least amount of money, right? So like if you make $20,000 versus $200,000, if you're like, okay, look, we're only taking 2%. The person making $200,000, giving out 2%, that's $4,000. Okay, great. Awesome, whatever. The person making $20,000 is losing $400. Now, if you're making only $20,000, the portion of your income that you have stashed away that's either discretionary or like savings, it's like zero, right? Because you're consuming for you to sustain living, like every single penny you have. Whereas the person making 200, it's like, oh, I'm stashing away some here. I got a retirement. I got whatever. Like that's the idea against a flat tax, right?
Yeah, I think you described it better than I could. Maybe you should be on JFAC.
I absolutely should not.
Or Rev and Tax. You should be on our Rev and Tax committee.
I do have a friend that's an accountant. Anyway,
Okay, good.
and I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express. Anyway,
Yes.
the point is that
Right.
that's the argument against that, right? Because people say, hey, look, this would be fair. Everybody pays the same amount. But if you look at percentages, it's like, okay, but you're taking a much higher percentage out of like, let's say groceries for the person only making 20.
Right. And then think about if you were making 20,000 and you got 400 taken out versus the other way, bigger percentage. And think about housing costs. Think about what
Right.
rent costs right now. Think about what potential
costs,
everything.
everything.
How
Gas
I don't know how
costs.
anyone lives on that. And I think there's an expectation of, our food being harvested, people serving, food in restaurants and cleaning hotel rooms. And I mean, my dad was a custodian when I was growing up. There are a lot of those jobs that we rely on, and I think, should treat the people that have them with a little dignity and respect so they can actually put food on their own table. So I'm not suggesting that, you know, that sometimes it's not a good thing to, like I said, decrease that tax level.
Sure,
But,
sure.
but we're at a point now of grave diminishing returns that it's hurting the community. And so even now when we look at JFAC, so we're estimated between 500 and 800 million dollars underwater if you consider the tax conformity bill from the Trump mega bill, from House Bill 1,
Sure.
whatever it was called. 400 or 500 to 800 million dollars upside down. And what I've heard is that people want to do more tax cuts. What that's going to do, and we've already seen the effects of that, is we've cut mental health services. Let's just use that one.
Sure.
That one was in the news, right? We're actually eliminating some programs that help people with severe mental illness and keep them in their homes, managed, not violent, out of institutions, and so forth, right? We've cut that whole thing, and you saw the sheriffs wrote a letter quick because they're raising the alarm bell that if you don't have these kind of services to help these folks in the community, it's going to come back on us, and then we're going to have law enforcement involved, and then they're going to go to jail or an emergency room, and then back to jail.
Okay.
Higher cost of care. So,
Right.
So if we cut the mental health services because we just need some money on the bottom line, we're not watching to see where the cost shifts, right? Because we're still going to pay, and it's going to be later. And it's going to be higher price. So what should we do there?
Okay. This is one of those things that and again, I'm not an intelligent person, but I see this dynamic appearing everywhere with early childhood reading, with like launch programs, with programs to reduce recidivism, right. with this. So, and you know who was a wizard at this? Alex Adams. He explained the whole foster care. He's like, listen, if we keep a kid in their house and we have programs around helping families stay together, it costs the state, I think it was like $1.80 a day. He's like, the second that kid goes into foster care because that family falls apart or the parents can't take care of the kid for whatever reason, it costs us like $50 a day. And then if you have to go to conjugate care with like some of the more extreme examples, you're looking at $500 to $1,200 a day. He's like, so it makes the most sense to have the $1.80 a day program to help families stay together, right, because then the state doesn't have to bear the burden. Now, if you want to eliminate those programs, right, because you're like, hey, look, we need to increase about like, this is a $100,000 program. Let's ditch this $100,000 program. That's fine. But then you're going to default into the $50 a day instead of $1.80 a day, right? Like all of these things come back. So with the mental yes. health, it's the same kind of thing, absolutely, right? Which is, look, it might cost us $50 a day to help this person with severe mental illness to stay in their house, right, and get whatever service they want. That may not rouse a lot of sympathy from some people, which is fine. I'm not saying they should be sympathetic, right, but from a financial standpoint, if that $50 a day is not spent, then we go back to we have an obligation if somebody's walking down the freeway losing their minds, horrible situation, but the cost to the taxpayer at that point, you're not looking at $50 a day. You're looking at law enforcement, you're looking at emergency medicine, you're looking at all of these different things. Where it's like, okay, now the bill is like $1,000 a day because we saved the money you didn't want to spend the 50 in the beginning, right?
That's exactly right. And you can apply that math to so many things. In corrections, right, with reentry services to reduce recidivism and get people into the community. You can apply that everywhere. And the other thing I think that we need to think about is not only financially makes sense, but in the cases that you're discussing, what I'm concerned about is public safety.
Because how do you put a price on if something bad happens? Well,
and that could happen because, not to anybody's fault of their own, but a serious mental illness.
If you have a schizophrenic.
And we have teams right now, I'm talking about these ACT teams, they're groups of folks that basically do wraparound services to follow up and do case manage on serious cases and those kind of things. But what's going to happen when, somebody doesn't get the kind of support they need, not at their fault, and they have uncontrollable situation and they go into a church with a gun, right? Those are the kind of things we read about. So it's not only make good fiscal sense, like Alex Adams says, like an ounce of prevention, right?
Right.
Is so much better. And so that's what's really frustrating and a struggle for this situation we're in now. The legislature created the crisis we're in because they said, hey, we're going to manufacture a revenue number so we can back into it with the expenses and the grocery list of items we want. So they looked at the revenue number last year. They approved it in March and said, we want to do $400 million in tax cuts, and we want to do this voucher program for 50. So we're going to set the revenue number that high to make sure we can justify doing it. And everyone knew. I mean, people were yelling at all the Democrats were like, don't do it. And a couple of few Republicans too were like, this doesn't make any good sense. Don't do it.
Everyone I spoke with off air and on air agreed. Like there, and to your
It's
point,
too much. It was too much. And now I think what we should do is, okay, regardless of what you knew, didn't know, motivation, intent, whatever, we know it was an error. So what do good leaders do? They say, you know what? We kind of blew it. We probably cut the revenue a little too hard, and it's going to really have negative impacts on the whole community, the whole state, whether it's public safety, education, mental health, all that. And just say, hey, maybe we suspend House Bill 40, which was the income tax, cut. And maybe we suspend the House Bill 93, in my estimation, which is the voucher program. That's like maybe $300 million there. And just pause it. Don't even say repeal it. Just pause. Let's use that, stabilize. Let's see what the revenue numbers come in instead of just continue to cut. I mean, there's a difference. When I first started in JFAC and started in the state 12 years ago, there was a frugality certainly about the legislature in our state. It's good. And my dad taught me to have a certain amount of money always in savings to, make sure if there's a rainy day I could pay for it, right? Totally smart. And what happened in the old days is that we valued government. We didn't want to crash it. And we said there is a right size. Let's be frugal about it. Let's be really good about it. And when we set the revenue, when we set the budgets, let's make sure we have a nice buffer just in case there is something we didn't anticipate. Let's set it down just a little. And let's make sure our rainy day funds are full. That philosophy is gone. And it seems like everybody just wants to cut. They hate government. They can't see the value, even though they're government, right? I'm a part of the government. The government doesn't have to be bad. What it has to be is transparent, accountable, open, and be a help, not a hindrance to the people. And I think we've kind of lost that.
Look, you're not going to get a big disagreement from me. Like, I don't know. What's interesting when people get really mad about government, they generally focus on like the national theater.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, is the sewer district bad? Right? Like, are all of the school board people bad? Like, which government exactly do you dislike? And there are complexities where it's like, listen, there's this huge problem over the farmers union ditch right now, and like I won't even get into it, but like Eagle Sewer District, it's a train wreck, and like people are super worked out. Like, I don't trust the government. I'm like, this is a sewer district. Like, what do you mean you don't trust like anyway, it is what it is. Like, you can't do anything about it.
But I think too, what has increased that sense of lack of trust in people is really kind of, I think, leaders at our level and above or all over haven't been willing to confront nonsense and to really, there's such fear about politically what's going to happen to my position. We're so worried about keeping our job instead of doing our job sometimes, and that doesn't help. Citizens go, okay, it's going to be all right. Right. And there's a lot of bias. So there are a lot of my constituents, they'll ask me like, what about this? And I'll tell them, and they totally trust me. Right. But there's some constituents, because I have a D behind my name, are like, I don't trust her. And we've got to work past that. It's just not good for anyone.
Right. Taking all this into account, with the conformity to I believe the way people describe it as OB3, right? Oh, the one big beautiful bill, right? OB3. And the conformity, this was actually really confusing. And of course, I was very fortunate to go to the Associated Taxpayers conference. But the bottom line is, when people talk about this, the problem is Idaho has its budget number, and we were off by, $40 to $50 million. Okay, great. Like, I don't know anything about it. Right. I didn't make the budget, but like I hear these things. The problem is, once the OB3 passed, it had tax provisions in it. Right. Like, should you no longer tax tips? Right. That was something in the bill. Now, Idaho gets to choose by itself, do I want to adopt that as a state? Because it's not affecting the federal. So if I get a tip, it won't be taxed at the federal level, but it will still be taxed at the state level. Now, Idaho gets to decide, okay, I do in fact want to engage in this. That's actually small potatoes in the bill compared to things like enhanced depreciation for investment. And this is where the real problem comes, because now it's like, okay, if you want to attract industry like the nuclear industry or other manufacturing to the state of Idaho, things of this nature, there's this provision in the in the OB3 which says, hey, look, you have to engage in enhanced depreciation, and that attracts capital into your area. And because people are like, okay, if I go to Idaho, I can spend $1 billion in stuff and I will get my money back quickly because I'll have enhanced depreciation. If we don't do that, Utah likely will. Wyoming likely will. So within the region of the West, if Idaho stands out as the one that doesn't conform to these things that attract industry, the industry will go elsewhere, which means if Idaho wants to continue attracting industry and wants to continue growing, we have to figure out a way to tolerate this 400 million price tag. That's one of the issues.
Well,
am I getting that correct?
I think you're getting that correct. There's some things that came out in JFAC today with the DFM, the budget director, and there are some.
What's the DFM?
Oh, Department of Financial Management.
Got it. That's Lori Wolf.
Right.
Okay, great.
So there was a lot of discussion around that today about bringing in experts, because there's some tax policy we have that mirrors that already. And so there is some belief that we're already doing some of that in our current tax policy. Now, so that's just the big picture without, again,
Understood.
all the details. Here's what I would say that too, what I've thought about in talking to people as well is people are coming to Idaho. I don't think we have any problem right now with industry coming here, but I'm not saying that we shouldn't be mindful of that. But we've got a lot of folks coming here.
Is that residents or businesses?
And businesses.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I mean, data centers are really wanting to be here. Micron, they're because of the current business policies we do have in tax policies.
Data centers aren't big job growth. They're growers though. Like the construction is great, but like you don't.
Right.
Like you could get a data center, it's like 50 long-term jobs.
Right.
Like Micron's really the only big boy
Yeah.
that's making a big stand.
So I do think there's some exploration in that to see what does our current tax policy do. The Tax Commission provided a number today saying that they believe conformity would be around 155 million. And what Lori Wolf was saying is she's looking at Utah kind of as a mirror, and theirs was about 200 million. And they're a bigger economy than we are. So there's still some settling in of those numbers. And I have to say I'm not an expert on that, but I will follow it.
Okay, so the number you mentioned at the beginning, the 500 to 800 million, it actually
That's
is...
for the 2027.
Okay.
Looking at just the bare bones maintenance bills now, budget bills that we would have just to keep the lights on, now we're cutting even more. And because of... Here's the thing. When you were talking about the tax conformity issue and all this, every second I'm like, we shouldn't be in this position. We should not be in this position. This is a self-inflicted wound, and now we're trying to figure out all these things to do. Everybody's stressed. People are worried about their job. State employees are actually going to get pay cut, right? Because they're not going to get any pay raise, but their health insurance is going to go up, so they're actually going to get a pay cut.
Right, and inflation is going to eat away at 3%.
Yeah. Exactly. So I just cannot stop thinking in my head, so upset that we put ourselves, not we, they, my Republican colleagues who wanted all these tax breaks, has put us here. It's irresponsible. It's not governing. And again, I'm not against, like, let's do some property tax relief for once. Let's do some grocery tax. Let's do those. The income tax is a good enough, right? And now it's just cut into everything. And by the way, everybody's talking about Medicaid expansion, repealing that. We'll actually lose money if we do it. Medicaid right now, the budgeted amount from the state is about $90 million. The Department of Health and Welfare did a study a couple years ago on the amount that we save. Because again, you're going to take care of these people one way or another. Exactly. And so there was like $78 million we save, plus we're generating $35 million in revenue based on it. And so if you actually repeal it, it'll cost the state about $20 million, because what people don't realize, We have state mandated services like for corrections, emergency, right?
Indigent, I can never say it.
Indigent,
Indigent
right?
care.
So all that always came out of the general fund. But once we shifted to Medicaid, and the reason we did it, we said, oh, we can get more money. Every dollar the state spends, federal tax dollars, $9 will come back, right? So $1 to 9. Now we can do all these other services at a much cheaper cost. And that's what people aren't kind of seeing. They're, they keep talking about able-bodied people should pay for their health care. Okay, sure. But the Medicaid expansion group is that group that was stuck in that gap, right? You either got to not work and force yourself into Medicaid. And if you make a little too much and you're trying to get ahead and you don't qualify, then you're in that gap. And then if you're trying to really raise a family and get ahead and do well, wouldn't that health insurance boost help you get there so you can continue down the road instead of just a cycle? Because what we created with the gap is a cycle you had to force back into Medicaid. And I know people don't like that. So if you cut Medicaid, you're going to cut it for 90,000 people, but it's going to affect everyone because people are going to go to the emergency room. Who do you think is going to pay for that?
Right. And this is one of those costs that we come back, the dynamic
Right, it's
that
a
we fall
cost
into.
shift,
It's like,
cost
listen,
shift.
Brian gets in a car accident. Right. Brian will be taken care of whether or not he has health insurance. Or I avoid going to get a checkup. Okay, look, I don't really watch the show, but do you ever watch Yellowstone? It doesn't matter. Kevin Costner's there. He's got a stomach ache. He ignores it, and then all of a sudden they have to cut him open on in a horse trailer because he's got an also. Yeah, it was. I couldn't watch the show after season 2. I'm I'm done.
How did they do dental emergencies back in the day? I think I had to go get a broken tooth fixed, and I was thinking, gosh, back in the day they would have bit down on something, give them some liquor, and pulled their tooth out.
Dude, didn't you see Castaway? Tom Hanks, he knocked his tooth out with an ice skate, and he's like, anyway.
Tough.
Yeah, dude. Oh my God, they were real tough. But again, this is one of those things where, and again, I don't know what the right answer is. But when you start looking at it, you're like, okay, if it costs the state $100 million, and we total get a billion in or not just economic activity, a billion in revenue, or excuse me, is being spent here because we get 900. Right. What is the multiplier of that $1 billion? So you have these multipliers, and even if you don't care about that, we still are going to take care of Brian in these emergency situations. But there's a higher probability, at least it was explained to me, there's a higher probability that he won't be seeking gainful employment, and you'll have people that game the system. And that's not good. So, and it only works to save money if we don't take care of the people on the back end. Now, if we didn't have an obligation to take care of Brian, then okay, we'll save the 100,000 or 100 million. Brian, you're on your own. Okay, but that's not the way our state works or our country works. Right. We have an obligation to take care of them.
And I don't think we want it. I don't think we want every man for himself, right? I mean, we agree in the social contract. We'll pay some taxes because we want roads, we want to have infrastructure, we want to make sure we can get on the internet and the lights go on, all that good stuff. I don't know what the end game is here for folks. Is it just to crash the government? Is it not have any services? Is it just every man for himself? And I just don't think that's what most people really want or deserve. We're in this together. I care about my neighbor, care about my family, care about my teachers.
We had revisions to Medicaid expansion last year, didn't we? Wasn't there was a work requirement put on? There were other things, right?
Yeah, the work requirement really isn't a work requirement because everybody had to work. Most people actually on Medicaid expansion are working, or they're giving care to a child or an adult.
Under 15.
They're going to school.
They're volunteering X number of hours.
Could there be some people that probably should be I don't know, probably, but majority of them are. And what's interesting to me is the workforce that goes in and helps people with disabilities. We call that the in-home, home and community-based services, helps keep people in their home. Once again, prevention. So we're not institutionalizing, higher cost, inhumane.
Right.
Most of those people make so little, they're on Medicaid expansion. And so here's the other sad part. In all this revenue crisis, the governor said 3% hold back on everybody, but Medicaid, you're going to do 4%. So all they could do statutorily was cut rates. So now the person, you tell me if you can hire a nurse to go in and help people for $13 an hour. You can't, right? So inadvertently they're going to cut rates and the service is going to go away. We're going to pay a higher cost. I mean, it is a mess to me. And that's not what people want. I mean, truly, I don't think. When you put the face to it, and that's the thing I said to somebody today. I said, here we are. We're talking about all these big numbers and percentages and this and that. Why don't you put the human cost in there? We're talking about how this impacts individual people. I would hope we would have a little more compassion in our hearts for our fellow man.
Well, the good news is you can be a terrible person and not care about your fellow man, but care about your dollars. And if there's a financial argument that's an ROI, then it's like, great, you dislike everyone, totally fine. Do you want to save $1?
Right.
Or do you want to spend $1 to save 50 cents?
You're using your head, I'm using my heart, but let's combine them. You're exactly right. There's always a human cost and there's always the financial cost. And again, the big picture to me, when I look at all the budgets, what I said today and asked my questions, I asked Lori Wolf, I said, okay, with all the things that are going on here and people are recommending what they're going to cut, have you done the analysis about the cost shift? So if we cut it here, where's it going to pop up? And what's your analysis of the increased cost? Because we're going to pay for it sooner or later.
Right.
So basically what we're doing, I mean, it's really dangerous what we're doing.
What did she say?
They hadn't done that quite yet.
Come on, Lori Wolf. These are the numbers. These are the numbers we need.
That I don't necessarily falter for that.
Sure.
Necessarily.
I'm sure it's complex.
But we should all be thinking like, oh gosh, we better figure out where these costs are going to shift because it's like the naughty mole game. It's going to pop up somewhere else. It just always does. So,
do we have data from pre-Medicaid expansion where we can say like this is what it was costing the state and like bop, because then it's like, okay, there you go.
Oh yeah.
Now multiply for population growth and there we have it.
Yeah, but those numbers exist. And the fact is, when we did Medicaid expansion, the agreement was we'll get rid of the catastrophic funds that help folks and the indigent funds. So those would, basically offset some of the fees for the counties and those kind of things, right? So my guess is, again, if we're sending more people to the emergency room, the hospital's got to, increase the cost.
Right. That increases the cost to the premium payer, to us.
Every day, right? So here I go. I'm paying it's going to come out on the individual and probably even property taxes would be my guess. So this is my criticism of the state sometimes. This is going to get controversial.
Oh my gosh, here we go.
Here's what I sometimes see in the state is that the state will put all these mandates on the counties and the local governments, said you got to provide this service. Then we cap how much taxes they can use and raise. And then we cut the other leg of the stool off and say we're going to take the state's share out and we're going to point the finger and blame you. Where the state basically shirks its responsibility all the time because it's a lot easier to run for office when you say I did tax cuts, right? Instead of, I partner with my local government to
Well, I wouldn't know because I've never run and I never will, but I can see what you mean.
But I do think that happens. I think at the state level, I have seen patterns of forcing things onto the counties and local governments. And then we're the big heroes by cutting taxes and everybody loves us. And then we blame the local governments for not doing what they should be doing, or they just can't afford it.
Well, that's happening all throughout the Treasure Valley, right?
Yeah.
Like, look at Star Middleton.
Yes.
This is...
they had like a fire building and they couldn't even hire.
They literally were able, and people... There's just zero understanding. I had a gentleman who I'm friends with, and he got a hold of me. He had moved to Star, and he texted me. He's like, "Can you explain this to me?" He's like, "I see the building, and it's saying that they can't. So many people have moved here. We should have more taxes." I'm like, "That's not how it." And I had to explain it. And by the way, it took like 10 minutes to explain all of these different things. And he was like, oh my God.
Well, good for him. He recognized, hey, we got all these new people. We should have the taxes to pay for this. Why don't we? Well, because there are people at the state level who have their own personal desires to keep cutting. And that's not doing the community any good. We expect that. Like, okay, obviously be responsible with our tax dollars, be accountable, make sure it's transparent. Absolutely, that is our responsibility. But, there are basic things that people miss. Let me give you a couple examples too. I could be here all night.
Could I ask you a quick question before the examples? Has there been any, I know people locally were talking about this, but have you heard of anybody picking up a bill that would exempt emergency services, police, fire, and like ambulance from 389?
Ooh.
because those are the
Yeah.
big ones where people are like, okay, look,
Right.
this is like in Star, that's the primary problem. By the way, the way property taxes work in 2020 compared to 2025, Star property taxes have been cut in half. So people are like, oh, our taxes are doubling. That's not true. In Star, and one of the people running for city council brought in his property tax bill.
Yeah.
He's like, it has been cut in half from 2020 to now. All the people moving here have in fact dropped my property tax, but the Star Fire District, which it went up 150% in population between 2020 and 2025.
Right.
They're like, they haven't gone up. They've gone up like 40% in funding.
Right.
Right? They have 150% more people to care for now, and 150% more calls, and the 40% marginally covers the COLA, cost of living adjustment, for their people. So like, it doesn't work.
389 capped the new growth piece, didn't it?
So what 389 did is said, look, as you increase number, we don't care what number of people you have.
Right.
We just care that the actual budget for the fire district can only go up in max between 7 and 8% per year. Well, that's all well fine if you don't exceed a certain population and for certain services. Like, but when you're dealing with fire service, they're like, look, for every 100 people we have, we're going to have X number of calls. We went from 10,000 people to 25,000 people. Like, we just like straight up, there's no way we can cover this with the same kind of calls for service. And then they start leaning on the surrounding areas because, of course, they're working with the other areas whose taxpayers, by the way, are paying for the fire service.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway.
I hear
Crazy
you.
old world, huh?
I hear you.
This is wild times.
Well, I think the other thing too, what's interesting is, people again talking all these numbers and government's too big and we got to cut. Let's just take our coroner system as an example.
This is not one that I've considered frequently, but hit me with it. County coroners.
County coroners are partisan elected officials.
Yes.
According to our
I did
Constitution.
know that. Yes.
And their budgets are set by county.
Great.
So Ada County has a lot of taxpayers. And so we have the only place in the state that's doing autopsies. Okay?
We do?
That's correct.
Like,
So everybody...
Bonneville doesn't?
That's correct.
Oh.
This is the only place an autopsy can be done in Idaho. And so what does that mean for everybody across the state? They got to transport a body here, right? So that's cost the county has to pay. If you've read any of the reports on the coroner system, I mean, I'm not denigrating the coroners or the coroner system or anything. I'm on the Criminal Justice Commission and I'm trying to work with coroners. We did pass a bill last year to start doing some reforms, but the reason I bring this up is because we just don't have the funding at the county level in a small county to pay for all the autopsies. So we have the lowest rate of autopsies for child death. And let's think back to the Chad Daybell case.
Wait. The lowest rate in the country?
Yes.
We have the lowest rate of child autopsies in the country. This is a percentage of child deaths. So it's not like gross numbers. You're like, we just don't have the funding to do autopsies on the children that pass.
Well, because if you don't have, first of all, we don't have a mandate currently that you should do it. And what people say is you can't mandate it because we don't have the funds. So again, that goes back to the county. And again, smaller counties can't afford it. So my idea, I'm starting to get closer and closer to this. There was an OP report done. Is we need to probably shift to a medical examiner system, or at least someone to help coordinate all these coroners and supervise and et cetera. But that takes money. But having a good autopsy system and a good coroner system increases public safety, increases the chances that we're going to hold criminals accountable, right?
Who's Chad Daybell? I'm so sorry.
Oh, remember that killed the kids and his wife and buried them in the backyard?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Again, I don't want to denigrate anybody or criticize, but there were a lot of problems with that case. And had we had more of accountability probably in our coroner system, which again, I'm not blaming the coroners, but there's just not financial support and there's not statutory requirements. They're elected officials. So I really respect and value that.
Sure.
But I'm just raising that issue to the general public because when you tell people, oh, the coroners are elected and what, and oh, they don't have to have any qualifications or degree, what, and there's no funding, there's no state funding for oversight or autopsies. I mean, you see what I'm saying? what I could do, even with a teeny tiny bit of that $400 million that was given away back in tax breaks, we could have an incredible coroner system that
Wait.
increases public safety and justice.
I could run for county coroner with no experience or medical
Correct.
degrees.
That's correct.
What would I be doing? Wouldn't it fall on
Death
me to
investigations.
like do autopsies and stuff?
You would have to do death investigations, and right now there's no like there is a training program that there are many coroners that take very seriously and go get trained and do all this stuff, but
Oh, sure. I'm not criticizing them.
but
Yeah.
they don't have a lot of money to get like accreditation. See what I'm saying?
This is wild.
But that goes back to the budget conversation. Like I'm thinking in the back of my head, like, gosh, what I could do with even $1 million. And again, I think taxpayers would demand, like, that's a pretty important service, isn't it?
That's pretty important service. At the very least, to have justice
I mean,
served.
and there are little things that happen. Like I was meeting with corrections, and there was some stories in the news about sexual abuse in the prisons. And I was like, hey, do you have body cameras? Well, some, but in the budget, we were going to make sure every single person had a body camera. But, now we're getting cut in the budget. And I was like, okay, everybody, even the guards would like that. So it's these little things that people don't see that, wow, that would really increase public safety, keep us out of the news.
Transparency, accountability.
Right. Keep people from being harmed, all those things.
Keep people from being wrongfully accused.
Exactly.
Right? If I was a guard, I'm like, can I just fund my own body cam?
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's little things like that. There's just a couple, the coroner system's a big example, but there are things all over in the budget that people are like, oh, you don't need that. That will impact everyday lives, right? I want to go to a state park and make sure the toilet's clean and there's toilet paper in there, right?
You're a crazy lady.
Crazy.
That's wild. God bless it.
But it's those little things like, right? And I don't want to have to pay $50 for the campsite.
Have you ever been to Bruno Dunes?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I went there the other day. It's like an hour outside Boise.
Totally cool.
They had the fighter jets flying overhead. We went down, okay, the sand dunes. All right. So I go down.
cool.
Yeah. I rent the board because you can rent the boards and they have their own homemade wax, which is lit. It's like, so you hike on up and then you get going down. If you ever go, like anybody listening, bring snow goggles. Cause I was like, oh, no problem. I'll just lean back. It won't be. I had sand in places. There was like never.
Well, don't
again.
talk about that.
Yeah.
But
No,
but
I meant
that's
like my
state park.
ears and stuff.
Right.
Not
State
like
park.
that.
State park, right?
My boots will never recover. Like it was so wild. I'm like, this is insane that first off, it's January and it was like 55 degrees. I was like, here we go.
I know.
And yeah, man, what a fun, and the 3 different campgrounds that they have there. And then the telescopes, get out with the telescopes. Dude, I'm going back there all summer. It's going to be fantastic.
But right, state parks, right?
Love state parks.
Right.
They're the best. Senator Wintrow, listen, I'm sure this will be the first of many, at least I hope, over the legislative session. I don't want to take too much of your time today. Is there anything else you want to hear at the end?
Well, hopefully I won't be crying next time either. We'll come back.
It was a very rough day.
But here, bottom line, I just want people to know, look, like you said, we talked a lot about the budget and revenue.
Yes.
Hey, responsible government means you look ahead. Governor Little at the press conference before the session, he said, we could see on the horizon maybe some clouds there, but it's not a rainy day. And I was like, dude, we just seeded all those clouds that are coming toward us. We have to do better as a legislature to look ahead and plan responsibly and not just create numbers that basically justify our own goals that don't really help most Idahoans. And we've got to get back to governing instead of giving away.
I appreciate you. Let's do it again.